The coffee mug slipped from my fingers, and I watched it shatter against the kitchen floor, like my entire world coming apart in slow motion. "Mom, did you hear me?" Brianna said, her voice carrying that new edge I'd been noticing lately. Sharp, impatient, nothing like the daughter I'd raised. I stared at the brown liquid spreading across the tile, seeping into the grout lines I'd scrubbed just yesterday. My hands trembled as I bent down to pick up the pieces, but Brianna's perfectly manicured nails caught my wrist. "Leave it," she said. "We need to talk about the living arrangements." Living arrangements. Such sterile, impersonal words for what she was really implying. I straightened up, my back tense, and looked at my daughter, truly looked at her for the first time in what felt like years. When had she become this stranger standing before me? The yoga pants she wore, sleek and form-fitting, and the designer top, probably worth more than my entire monthly grocery budget, caught my eye. Her hair was perfectly styled, every strand in place, a glossy, professional sheen that looked as though it belonged in a high-end salon commercial. Her makeup, subtle but impeccable, seemed to have been applied by an artist, enhancing every feature with precision. She looked like she belonged on the cover of a magazine, in a world of opulence and glamour. Yet here she was, standing in my modest kitchen, the scent of old coffee still lingering in the air, the outdated appliances humming quietly in the background, and the worn linoleum beneath our feet that had seen better days. How had we drifted so far apart? "You're moving in," I said slowly, "with James and his parents." "It's temporary," Brianna said, but her eyes didn't meet mine. "The apartment is too small now, and with the baby coming, we need more space. You have 3 bedrooms here, Mom. It just makes sense." Makes sense. I'd heard that phrase before, 16 years ago when her father explained why he was leaving. It made sense for him to start over with someone younger. It made sense for him to take the new car and leave me with the rust bucket. Everything always made sense when it benefited someone else. "When?" I asked. "This weekend," Brianna said. She was scrolling through her phone now, barely paying attention. "James's parents are driving up Saturday morning. We figured we'd get everything moved in one trip. This weekend. 3 days. I felt something crack inside my chest, something that had been holding strong for 47 years through a bad marriage, a painful divorce, years of working double shifts to pay for Brianna's college, and countless sacrifices that now seemed to mean absolutely nothing. "You didn't ask," I said quietly. Brianna looked up from her phone, irritation flickering across her face. "Mum, you're always saying how lonely you are in this big house. Now you'll have company. Isn't that what you wanted?" What I wanted? When had anyone cared about what I wanted? I'd wanted my daughter to visit more than twice a year. I'd wanted her to remember my birthday without Facebook reminding her. I'd wanted her to introduce me to James's family before she married him in that courthouse ceremony I wasn't invited to because it was just a small thing, Mom, nothing personal. "I need to think about this," I said. "There's nothing to think about," Brianna replied. She tucked her phone into her designer purse and headed toward the door. "We'll be here Saturday around 10. Make sure the guest rooms are ready." She left without hugging me goodbye. The door clicked shut with a finality that reverberated through the quiet house, each tiny sound echoing in the hollow space where warmth and familiarity once existed. I stood there, rooted in place in my kitchen, the faint smell of yesterday's coffee still hanging in the air, and gazed at the broken pieces of my favorite mug scattered across the floor. It had been a gift, a symbol of better times, but now it lay in ruins, just like my relationship with her. I felt something shift inside me, a deep, unsettling feeling. It wasn't grief, not anymore. It was something darker, something determined. I wasn't going to be the victim anymore. Saturday arrived with the crushing inevitability of an executioner's deadline. The days leading up to it had blurred together in a haze, the hours slipping by unnoticed as I moved through the motions. I spent the last 3 days preparing the bedrooms, remaking beds, folding towels, straightening pillows, while my mind raced, never fully able to settle. I washed sheets that were already clean. I dusted furniture that didn't need dusting. I cooked a pot roast, the scent filling the house with its rich, savory aroma, though I knew, deep down, it was destined to be ignored, perhaps even resented. No one cared about the food or the effort anymore. Not since things had changed. At exactly 10:15, 3 vehicles pulled into my driveway, their tires crunching over the gravel like a marching band announcing an invasion. James drove the first one, a sleek black SUV that looked almost too pristine, too aggressive for the space it was parked in. Brianna sat in the passenger seat, her face buried in her phone, scrolling endlessly as if the world around her wasn't real, as if nothing mattered but the little screen in her hands. Behind them came a rental truck, large and boxy, the kind used for moving furniture, its back door rattling with the weight of their things. And trailing behind that was a sedan, elegant, cold, a woman with steel grey hair pulled into a tight, severe bun behind the wheel. Her face was as unreadable as the stone she seemed to be carved from. I watched them from the window, hidden behind the curtains, a spectator to this silent invasion. The man who climbed out of the rental truck was James's father, a barrel-chested man with a loud, booming voice that seemed to carry across the yard like a foghorn. He barked orders, directing the others with a command that could be felt in the pit of your stomach. His every movement was sharp, deliberate, as if he were accustomed to being obeyed. His wife, however, was the real force. She moved with the sharp efficiency of someone used to being in charge, her every step calculated, her eyes constantly darting from one person to the next, checking for any mistake or misstep. She had the air of someone who had seen everything done wrong and knew exactly how to fix it. At least, that's how she carried herself. They didn't bother with pleasantries. Nobody knocked. James, as though it was his right, used a key I didn't even know Brianna had given him. He unlocked the door with a coldness that made my chest tighten and led the parade of people into my home, like they were stepping onto their own turf. I stood there, my heart hammering in my chest, unsure if I should confront them now or wait. But there was no waiting anymore. This was happening. "Rita," he said, barely glancing at me, "where do you want us to put their stuff?" Us, not them, as if he already owned the place. "The blue bedroom upstairs," I said, "end of the hall." He nodded and started hauling boxes up the stairs. James was tall and lean, with the kind of smile that looked practiced in a mirror. He wore expensive jeans and a polo shirt with a logo I didn't recognize. His watch probably cost more than my car. "Mrs. Andrews," James's mother said, appearing in my kitchen without invitation. "I'm Patricia. We need to discuss the household arrangements." I turned from the stove, where I'd been checking the roast. Patricia stood with her hands clasped in front of her, her posture military straight. Everything about her screamed control freak. "Arrangements," I said. "Cooking schedules, cleaning duties, that sort of thing," Patricia said. She pulled out a folded paper from her purse. "I've made a preliminary chart. Of course, we can adjust as needed." She spread the paper on my kitchen table, and I stared at it in disbelief. She'd divided every household task into a rotating schedule. My name appeared in the smallest font at the bottom. "I usually do my own cooking," I said carefully. "Well, that won't be efficient with 5 adults in the house," Patricia said. "We need organization, structure." 5 adults. She was already counting me as just another resident in my own home. Upstairs, I could hear James's father bellowing about furniture placement. Brianna's voice drifted down, agreeing with everything he said. When had my daughter become such a stranger? I looked at Patricia's chart again, at the way she'd reorganized my entire life without asking, and felt that dark determination from 3 days ago crystallize into something harder, something dangerous. "I'll think about it," I said. Patricia's smile tightened. "It's really not optional, dear. We're all living here now. We need rules." That word, rules, In my house. The house I'd paid for with 20 years of secretarial work and weekend waitressing. The house I'd kept after the divorce because I'd fought for it tooth and nail while my ex-husband tried to force a sale. "We'll see," I said, and turned back to the stove. I heard Patricia's sharp intake of breath behind me, the rustle of her refolding the paper. Her heels clicked against the floor as she left the kitchen, and I knew I'd made an enemy. Good. I was tired of making friends with people who only wanted to walk all over me. The afternoon descended into chaos. James's parents flooded the upstairs bedroom with furniture that barely fit. The hallway quickly became an obstacle course of boxes. Brianna directed traffic from the living room couch, never once asking if I needed help or if the whole situation was overwhelming. By evening, they'd settled in like occupying forces. James's father, Robert, planted himself in my recliner, demanding the TV remote. Patricia took over my kitchen, reorganizing my cabinets while making disapproving noises about my organizational system. Brianna finally approached me around 7. "Thanks for being so understanding, Mom," she said, though her eyes were already drifting past me to James, who was calling her from the other room. Understanding. That's what she thought this was. I smiled and nodded, playing the part of the grateful mother who was happy to have her family close. But inside, I was already planning, already thinking, already remembering my old friend Gloria, who had mentioned something interesting about fire safety inspections the last time we'd met for coffee. And I was thinking about Mark. I met Mark on a Tuesday afternoon at the grocery store, 3 weeks after my world had been invaded. He'd reached for the same bottle of wine I was grabbing, and our hands had touched. Such a cliché, but sometimes clichés happen because they're based in truth. "Sorry," he'd said, pulling back. Then he'd looked at me, really looked and smiled. "Though I have to say, you have excellent taste." Mark was 52, with grey threading through his dark hair and lines around his eyes that came from smiling, not scowling. He was handsome in an understated way, the kind of man who got better looking the longer you talked to him. He wore jeans and a button-down shirt, and his wedding ring finger was bare. We'd talked in the wine aisle for 20 minutes. He'd asked me to coffee. I'd said yes before I could talk myself out of it. That was 6 months ago. Now, Mark was the best part of my life, the only part that felt entirely mine. He lived across town in a condo overlooking the river. He worked for Titan Industries, a manufacturing company that competed directly with James's employer, Westfield Manufacturing. I hadn't told Brianna about Mark. It felt good having a secret, having something that was just mine in a house where privacy had become a forgotten concept. Patricia had taken to entering my bedroom without knocking. Robert helped himself to my beer and never replaced it. James treated my living room like his personal office, spreading papers across every surface. And Brianna? She'd stopped pretending to care about me at all. "You look tired," Mark said. We were sitting in his living room, glasses of wine in hand. Through the windows, the city lights sparkled against the dark river. "Is it getting worse?" "Patricia reorganized my bathroom yesterday," I said. "She threw out half my products because they were outdated." "They weren't outdated, she just didn't like them." Mark shook his head. "You know you don't have to put up with this, right? It's your house." "It doesn't feel like my house anymore," I said quietly. He set down his wine and took my hand. "Then take it back." "How?" I asked. The question came out sharper than I'd intended. "They're family, Mark. If I kick them out, Brianna will never forgive me." "Brianna doesn't seem too concerned about your forgiveness," Mark said gently. "From what you've told me, she hasn't even thanked you for letting them stay." He was right, of course. Brianna acted like she was doing me a favor by being there. Last week, she'd actually complained that my house wasn't close enough to her favorite restaurants. Not thanked me for the roof over her head, but complained about the location. "Tell me about James's work," Mark said suddenly. I looked at him, surprised by the subject change. "What about it?" "You mentioned he's at Westfield Manufacturing," Mark said. "What does he do there?" "Something in operations management," I said. He talks about it constantly at dinner, but I tune it out. Why? Mark leaned back, his expression thoughtful. Westfield's been cutting corners lately. I hear things through industry channels. Safety violations, mostly. OSHA's been sniffing around. Something in his tone made me sit up straighter. What kind of safety violations? The expensive kind, Mark said. The kind that could shut a facility down if the right people found out about them. Our eyes met, and I saw understanding pass between us. Mark worked for Westfield's competitor. He'd have access to information, or at least channels to get information, and I had a sudden, burning need to know exactly what James was involved in. Could you find out more? I asked. Mark studied me for a long moment. Rita, what are you thinking? I'm thinking, I said slowly, that I'm tired of being the victim. I'm tired of being walked over. And I'm thinking that if James has been careless, if he's been breaking rules, then maybe that information needs to reach the right authorities. That's not just taking back your house, Mark said. That's revenge. I met his gaze without flinching. Yes, I said, it is. Mark was quiet for a moment, then he nodded. I'll make some calls, he said. I know people who know people. If James is dirty, we'll find out. Thank you, I whispered. He pulled me close, and I rested my head against his shoulder. For the first time in months, I felt something other than helpless anger. I felt powerful, determined, dangerous. Mark moved faster than I'd expected. Within a week, he'd already made contact with someone working in Westfield's Safety Compliance Department, someone who was beyond frustrated with how things were being run. Her name's Jennifer, Mark told me one morning over coffee at a diner, far from my neighborhood. The place was quiet, the clink of cups and silverware, the only sound as he slid a folder across the table. She's been trying to blow the whistle internally for months, but management keeps shutting her down. They're more concerned with meeting production quotas than addressing the safety issues. I raised an eyebrow, feeling a flicker of hope. What kind of issues? Mark opened the folder, revealing a stack of documents that felt heavier than they looked. Inside were printouts of emails, incident reports, and photographs. I hesitated for only a second before flipping through them, my stomach tightening with each page I saw. The first image was of a fire suppression system, rusted, neglected, and covered in dust, marked with a date that showed it hadn't been inspected in over 3 years. My heart skipped a beat as I moved on to the next. Emergency exits were blocked by piles of inventory, clearly marked as unsafe in the report, but ignored for the sake of storing more goods. Then, a photograph of electrical panels, their covers askew, wires exposed. It wasn't hard to see the scorch marks from sparks and smoke, but it was clear no one had bothered to fix them because shutting down the production line would cost money. And then there were the incident reports, names redacted, but the complaints clear. Employees filing grievances about unsafe conditions, only to be told over and over to stop being dramatic or overreacting. I stopped turning the pages when I saw James's name. It appeared again and again in the email chains. Each time, he was dismissing safety concerns, pushing back inspection dates, and approving shortcuts that saved the company money, but risked the well-being of everyone on the floor. I felt a cold knot form in the pit of my stomach as I read the final line, his response to one complaint where an employee had raised concerns about faulty equipment. Let's just move the date back a week and deal with it then. No need for alarms. I looked up at Mark, my pulse racing. So, he knew. He knew all of this was happening and did nothing. Mark nodded, his expression dark. Exactly. And now it's all out in the open. Jennifer's ready to go public, but she needs someone with influence. That's where you come in. This is criminal, I said quietly. It's certainly actionable, Mark agreed. The question is what you want to do with this information. I looked at the photographs again. One showed a fire extinguisher mounted on a wall, its inspection tag dated from 2019. Another showed pallets, stacked so high in front of an emergency exit that no one could possibly get through in a crisis. "I have a friend," I said slowly. "Gloria. We went to high school together. She works in fire safety inspections for the county." Mark nodded. "Would she be willing to look into this?" "Gloria's honest to a fault," I said. "If I show her this, she'll have to investigate. It's her job." "Then maybe it's time for a reunion with an old friend," Mark said. I called Gloria that night from Mark's condo. The house had become too compromised for private phone calls. Patricia had taken to listening at doors, and James had helped himself to my laptop once, claiming he needed to check something real quick. "Rita," Gloria's voice was warm and surprised. "It's been months. How are you?" We caught up for a few minutes, the usual small talk about families and work. Then I steered the conversation where I needed it to go. "Actually, I wanted to ask your advice about something," I said. "It's work-related. Well, workplace safety-related." "I'm listening," Gloria said, her tone shifting to professional. I told her about Westfield Manufacturing, about the concerns that had been raised, about the documentation I'd seen. I didn't mention James specifically at first. I wanted her honest assessment before family complications entered the picture. "Rita, if what you're describing is accurate, that facility should be inspected immediately," Gloria said. "Those aren't minor violations. Those are the kind of conditions that can lead to serious harm." "What would happen if you found violations?" I asked. "Depends on severity," Gloria said. "Minor issues, they get citations and fines. Major issues, we can shut them down until compliance is met. If there's evidence of deliberate negligence or falsified inspection records, we bring in law enforcement." Law enforcement. The word sent a chill through me. This wasn't just about making James's life difficult. This was about actual consequences. Prison time, potentially. "There's something else," I said. "My son-in-law works there. James. He's in management, operations level. His name is on a lot of the documentation dismissing safety concerns." Gloria was quiet for a moment. "Rita, are you sure you want to open this door? If James is involved in safety violations, an investigation could destroy his career. It could destroy Brianna's marriage." "I know," I said quietly. "But Gloria, if someone gets hurt because these violations weren't reported, could you live with yourself?" "No," she said immediately. "I couldn't." "Neither could I said, and meant it. Yes, I wanted revenge. Yes, I wanted James to face consequences for how he'd treated me, for how he'd enabled Brianna's transformation into someone I didn't recognize. But more than that, I wanted to do the right thing. Those workers deserved a safe workplace. "Send me what you have," Gloria said. "I'll start the paperwork for an inspection. It'll take a few weeks to get scheduled, but once we're in there, if we find what you're describing, there will be hell to pay." After I hung up, Mark wrapped his arms around me from behind. "No going back now," he said. "No," I agreed. "No going back." Something changed in me after that phone call. Maybe it was knowing that wheels were in motion, that justice was coming whether I continued to play the meek householder or not. Maybe it was just that I'd reached my breaking point. Either way, I stopped pretending. It started small. Patricia tried to hand me her laundry one morning, expecting me to wash it along with my own. I handed it back. "I'm not your maid," I said simply. She blinked at me, shocked. "But the schedule says—" "I don't care what your schedule says," I interrupted. "This is my house. I'll do my own laundry. You can do yours." Her face flushed red. "That's not how this works. We're a household now. Everyone contributes." "You're right," I said. "Everyone contributes. Starting with the $400 a month each of you should be paying me for rent." The number came out of nowhere, but once I said it, I committed. "That's fair market value for rooms in this neighborhood. I checked. You've been here 6 months now. That's $9,600 you owe me." Patricia's mouth opened and closed like a fish. "That's ridiculous. We're family." "Then treat me like family instead of a servant," I said, and walked away. That night, Brianna cornered me in the kitchen. "Mom, what's going on? Patricia says you're demanding rent money." I'm not demanding anything, I said calmly, my voice steady despite the storm brewing inside me. I'm simply pointing out that 4 adults living rent-free in my house is unsustainable. We're not living rent-free, Brianna protested, her eyes flashing with irritation. James pays for groceries sometimes. Sometimes, I repeated, emphasizing the word. Brianna, do you have any idea how much my utility bills have increased since you all moved in? Robert takes hour-long showers. Patricia runs the dishwasher 3 times a day. James leaves every light in the house on. So this is about money? Brianna snapped, her voice rising. God, Mom, I thought you'd be happy having family around. But I guess I was wrong. I guess you're just bitter and alone, and you want everyone else to be miserable too. The words hit like physical blows, and for a moment I felt the sting deep in my chest. But I didn't let her see it. I was done letting her see my pain. I had cried enough tears over my daughter, and I was done with that too. I'm not bitter, I said quietly, my voice barely above a whisper. I'm tired of being taken for granted, tired of being invisible in my own home, tired of sacrificing everything while getting nothing in return. You're being dramatic, Brianna said, her tone dismissive, as if I were a child throwing a tantrum. And you're being selfish, I replied, my voice steady, but the anger I'd held in for so long rising to the surface. When's the last time you asked how I was doing? When's the last time you thanked me for anything? When's the last time you acted like you cared about me at all? Brianna's face went pale, then flushed bright red with the force of her anger. I can't believe you're saying this. After everything we've been through, after Dad left and I was there for you. You were 16 when your father left, I interrupted, my voice sharp. You were there for me because you were a child living in my house. You didn't have a choice. But you're not a child anymore, Brianna. You're 28 years old, and you've made your choices clear. You've chosen James and his parents, and this life that has no room for me except as a free hotel. That's not fair, Brianna whispered, her voice cracking with emotion. No, I agreed, my own voice softer now, yet filled with the weight of everything I'd kept inside for so long. It's not. None of this is fair. She left the kitchen, and I heard the sound of her crying upstairs. It tore at me, a sharp pain in my chest, but part of me, most of me, remained rooted to the spot. I wanted to follow her, to apologize, to smooth things over the way I always had. But I stayed where I was. Some bridges needed to burn. The next morning, I made breakfast for myself. A simple meal. Just me, just the way I was used to now. I left the kitchen when I was done, leaving everything behind. When Patricia came downstairs and found no food prepared for the household, she actually looked offended, her eyebrows knitting together in clear disapproval. It was the kind of reaction I had come to expect from her, an entitled, self-righteous attitude, as if she'd been personally slighted. But for once, I didn't care. "Where's breakfast?" she asked. "In your own hands," I said, not looking up from my newspaper. "There are eggs and bread in the kitchen. Help yourself." Robert wandered in a few minutes later, following the argument. "Now, see here, Rita, we've all been very patient with your attitude lately, but this is getting ridiculous." "What's ridiculous?" I said, finally setting down the paper, "is 4 grown adults expecting a woman they don't pay to cook and clean and organize their lives. What's ridiculous is moving into someone's home and trying to take it over. What's ridiculous is my own daughter treating me like hired help." "We don't treat you like hired help," Robert blustered. "Really?" I stood up. "Then why does Patricia reorganize my belongings without asking? Why do you drink my beer and never replace it? Why does James use my living room as his office and his bedroom, spreading his work across every surface? Why has no one, not one of you, ever asked if I mind?" "Because you never said anything," Patricia said. Her voice was cold now, calculating. "If you'd had a problem, you should have spoken up." "I'm speaking up now," I said. "And here's what's going to change. You'll do your own cooking, your own laundry, your own cleaning. You'll ask before using my belongings. You'll treat this house with respect because it's not yours. It's mine. And if we don't like these new rules, Robert asked. I smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. Then you're welcome to leave. The confrontation left me shaking, but it felt good. For the first time in months, I'd stood up for myself. I'd drawn boundaries. I'd stopped being a victim. That evening, Mark came over for the first time. I'd texted him earlier, told him to come by around 7. When Brianna opened the door and found a strange man standing there, her confusion was almost comical. "Can I help you?" she asked. "I'm here to see Rita," Mark said pleasantly. I appeared in the hallway, dressed in a nice blouse and jeans instead of the frumpy sweats I'd been wearing around the house. "Mark, come in. Everyone, this is Mark. Mark, this is my daughter Brianna, her husband James, and his parents Patricia and Robert." The silence was deafening. They all stared at Mark like he'd materialized from another dimension. "Mark and I have been dating for 6 months," I said casually. "I thought it was time you all met him. We're going to watch a movie in the living room. You're welcome to join us or make yourselves scarce. Either way works." Mark followed me into the living room, and I heard the whispered conversation exploding in the kitchen behind us. I didn't care. Let them be shocked. Let them realize I had a life beyond serving their needs. We didn't actually watch a movie. We sat on the couch, talking quietly, occasionally laughing. Mark's presence was a statement, a declaration that I was done hiding, done shrinking, done apologizing for existing. When Brianna finally worked up the courage to approach us, her face was carefully neutral. "Mom, can I talk to you? Alone?" "Anything you need to say, you can say in front of Mark," I replied. She glanced at him, then back at me. "When were you going to tell me you were seeing someone?" "When it became relevant," I said. "It's my personal life, Brianna. I'm not required to report my dating activities to you." "I'm your daughter," she protested. "Yes," I said. "And I'm your mother. When's the last time you treated me like one?" She had no answer for that. She retreated upstairs, and I heard her arguing with James through the ceiling. Their voices rose and fell, but I couldn't make out the words. I didn't care to. "You're really doing this," Mark said quietly. "I'm really doing this," I confirmed. "Good," he said and kissed me. Upstairs, Brianna's voice rose to a shout. Something crashed. More arguing, the sounds of my daughter's perfect life starting to crack. I smiled against Mark's lips and felt absolutely no guilt. Gloria called 2 weeks later. "We're going in tomorrow," she said. 10 a.m., surprise inspection. Don't tell anyone." "I won't," I promised. That night, I could barely sleep. The weight of everything hung over me like a thick fog, keeping my body restless, my mind on a constant loop. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle around me. The creaks and groans of old wood echoed in the quiet, the house waking and shifting in its own way. Down the hall, Patricia snored like a chainsaw, an almost rhythmic sound that grated on my nerves. Above me, James and Brianna's bedroom was eerily silent, but I knew they were there, probably scrolling through their phones until dawn, disconnected from the world around them, just as they always were. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tomorrow, the investigation would begin. Tomorrow, consequences would start landing. I could feel it in my bones, the quiet anticipation of what was coming. It was a change I had been waiting for, one I had fought for, even when it meant going against my own family. I should have felt guilty. I should have felt like a traitor for turning in my own son-in-law, for unraveling the life he'd worked so hard to build. But all I felt was a cold, hard satisfaction, like a knot that had been tied tight for too long, finally loosening. James left for work at his usual time, 7:30 a.m. He whistled as he walked to his car, a confident, careless tune, his coffee travel mug swinging in one hand, his phone in the other, completely oblivious. He had no idea what was waiting for him. He had no idea the storm that was brewing just out of sight, a storm I had set in motion. At 9:45, my phone buzzed on the bedside table. I picked it up without hesitation. A text from Gloria. On site now. I imagined the scene in vivid detail. Gloria and her team arriving at Westfield Manufacturing with their clipboards, measuring equipment, and citation books. The receptionist probably called back to management, panic quickly spreading through the building like wildfire. James, sitting at his desk, would get the alert, his face going pale as he realized what was happening. I couldn't help but picture it, and for a moment, I almost felt a strange sense of satisfaction, watching him begin to understand the magnitude of what was unfolding. At 11:30, Gloria's name flashed across the screen again. I answered immediately, my pulse quickening as I heard her voice on the other end. "Rita, it's worse than we thought." My heart skipped a beat. "How bad?" "Criminal negligence bad," she said quietly, her voice thick with the gravity of the situation. "Falsified inspection records going back 4 years. Safety equipment that's never been serviced. 3 separate incidents in the past year that should have been reported to OSHA but weren't. And Rita, your son-in-law's signature is on everything. He approved all of it." I sat down heavily on the edge of my bed, the weight of her words sinking deep into my chest. I had known it was bad, but hearing it all laid out like that, it hit harder than I expected. "What happens now?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "We're shutting them down pending a full investigation," Gloria replied, her tone unwavering. "Local law enforcement is on their way. The company will face massive fines. Individuals who signed off on the falsified records will face criminal charges." The finality in her voice hit me like a punch to the gut. It was happening. My heart pounded in my chest, a mixture of relief and disbelief flooding through me. I had set this in motion. I had made this choice, and now there would be no turning back. "Criminal charges," I repeated. "Rita, people could have died," Gloria said. "People were injured and it was covered up. This isn't just administrative violations. This is conspiracy to commit fraud, reckless endangerment, probably more once the lawyers dig in." "Thank you for telling me," I said. "Are you okay?" Gloria asked. "I will be," I said. At 1:15, James came home. I heard his car screech into the driveway, the door slam. He burst into the house shouting Brianna's name. I stayed in my room listening. Their voices carried through the walls. "What happened?" Brianna demanded. "The plant's shut down," James said. His voice was high, panicked. "Fire inspectors came in with a warrant. They're saying we falsified safety records. They're saying criminal charges, Brianna. Criminal charges." "That's impossible," Brianna said. "You don't handle safety stuff." "I signed off on the reports," James said. "My boss told me everything was fine, that it was just paperwork. I signed off on everything he put in front of me." "Oh God, Brianna, I'm going to jail." "Don't be dramatic," Brianna said, but her voice shook. "I'm not being dramatic," James shouted. "There were cops there. Cops. They took boxes of records. They interviewed everyone in management. My lawyer says this is serious, Brianna. This is federal charges, serious." Downstairs, Patricia and Robert had emerged from wherever they'd been hiding. I heard their voices join the chaos, everyone talking over each other, panic spreading like wildfire. I stayed in my room, stayed quiet, stayed invisible. Just like they'd wanted me to be. The next 48 hours were chaos. James didn't sleep. He paced the house at all hours, on the phone with lawyers, with his boss, with anyone who might have answers. Brianna retreated into herself, her face pale and drawn. Patricia kept trying to take control of the situation, making phone calls and demanding explanations, but there was nothing she could control. Robert just drank. He sat in my recliner and drank my beer and watched the news coverage of the Westfield manufacturing shutdown. Turns out, when a major manufacturing facility gets closed by fire inspectors for criminal safety violations, it makes headlines. I watched it all from the sidelines. I cooked for myself and cleaned up after myself and stayed out of their way. When they asked if I knew anything about the inspection, I lied smoothly. No, I had no idea. What a shock, how terrible. Mark came over every evening. By the third night, his presence wasn't even questioned. He'd become part of the landscape, another witness to the Andrews family implosion. The DA's filing charges next week, Mark told me quietly. We were sitting in my bedroom with the door closed. Jennifer, my contact, says they have James completely cornered. He signed off on falsified inspection reports 27 times over 3 years. He didn't know they were falsified, I said. Doesn't matter, Mark said. He had a duty to verify. He didn't. That's negligent at best, complicit at worst. What's the likely outcome? I asked. Plea deal, probably, Mark said. He'll cooperate, testify against his bosses, serve some time. Maybe 2 years if he's lucky. 2 years. James would go to prison for 2 years. Brianna would be a single mother with a husband in jail. Their perfect life would be destroyed. I should have felt guilty. I didn't. On the 5th day, Brianna finally confronted me. I was making coffee in the kitchen when she appeared in the doorway. She looked terrible. Her hair was unwashed, her eyes red and swollen from crying. The designer clothes had been replaced by sweats. Did you know? She asked. I looked at her carefully. Did I know what? Did you know James was going to get arrested? Her voice broke. Did you know about the investigation? Why would I know anything about James's work? I asked calmly. Because this is convenient, Mom, Brianna said. Really convenient. You were angry with us. You wanted us gone. And now James is facing prison time and will have to leave, and it's all just so damn convenient. I set down my coffee cup. Are you accusing me of something? I don't know, Brianna said. Did you do something? I could have lied. Part of me wanted to lie, to maintain the pretense. But I was so tired of pretending. I made a phone call, I said quietly. I told a friend who works in fire safety that there might be violations at Westfield Manufacturing. That's all I did. Brianna stared at me. You got James arrested. No, I said firmly. James got James arrested. He signed documents without reading them. He approved safety shortcuts to meet production quotas. He put workers at risk to save money. I didn't do any of that. I just made sure someone looked. You destroyed our lives, Brianna whispered. No, I said again. You destroyed your own life when you decided I was nothing more than a free hotel. When you moved into my house without asking and treated me like a servant. When you stopped being my daughter and became just another person taking advantage of me. So this is revenge, Brianna said. You did this to punish us. I thought about that. Was it revenge? Yes. Was it also the right thing to do? Also, yes. I did it because it needed to be done, I said finally. Those workers deserved a safe workplace. The violations needed to be reported. If that also solved my problem of having ungrateful guests overstaying their welcome, well, that's just a bonus. Brianna's face crumpled. I can't believe you. I can't believe you'd do this to your own daughter. I can't believe you moved into my house and never once said thank you, I replied. I can't believe you brought your husband and his parents into my home and then acted like I was the inconvenience. I can't believe you forgot that I'm your mother, not your doormat. Get out, Brianna said. I laughed, and it was not a kind sound. This is my house, Brianna. If anyone's leaving, it's you. She stood there, trembling with rage and tears streaming down her face. I hate you, she said. Right now, I'm okay with that, I said. She ran from the kitchen. I heard her thundering up the stairs, heard her sobbing to James. More shouting, more chaos. I finished making my coffee and took it to the living room where Mark was waiting. She knows, I said. I heard, he replied. Are you okay? I'm better than okay, I said. I'm free. They left 3 days later. James had been arrested and released on bail, with a court date set for 6 weeks out. His lawyer had advised him to start making arrangements because prison time was inevitable. Brianna could barely look at me. Patricia tried one last time to assert control. "We'll need to store some things here while we find a new place," she announced. "No," I said simply. "Be reasonable," Patricia said. "We can't take everything with us immediately." "You've had 3 days to pack," I said. "Whatever doesn't fit in your vehicles gets donated. I'm not running a storage facility." "This is unconscionable," Patricia sputtered. "We're family." "Family asks for permission," I said. "Family says thank you. Family contributes. You did none of those things. Now you pay the price." Robert tried to intimidate me, standing in the doorway with his arms crossed and his chest puffed out. "You can't just kick us out on the street." "I'm not," I said calmly. "You have 3 days' notice. That's more courtesy than you showed me when you moved in. You had your moving truck packed and ready before you even told me you were coming." "Brianna will never forgive you for this," Robert said. "Probably not," I agreed, "but I'll sleep just fine anyway." They packed in a frenzy of anger and resentment. Boxes were thrown rather than carried. Doors slammed. Patricia made sure to break one of my dishes, then claimed it was an accident. I didn't react. I just watched them dismantle their invasion of my home, piece by piece. James barely spoke to anyone. He moved like a ghost, pale and hollow-eyed. His lawyer had apparently laid out exactly what he was facing: federal charges, mandatory minimums, a destroyed career. The golden boy with his fancy car and designer clothes was headed for a prison cell, and everyone knew it. Brianna wouldn't look at me at all. She packed her things with mechanical efficiency, her face a mask of controlled rage. When she carried boxes past me, she made sure to bump my shoulder, to invade my space, to make her anger physical since she couldn't make it verbal. I let her have her petty victories. They cost me nothing. On the morning they were scheduled to leave, I made breakfast for myself and sat at the kitchen table, reading the newspaper. Mark had stayed the night, another small rebellion that would have been unthinkable a month ago. He came down in his bathrobe and kissed the top of my head before pouring his own coffee. "Almost over," he said. "Almost," I agreed. At 9 a.m., the rental truck arrived. Robert had insisted on renting the biggest one available, as if the sheer size of the vehicle could somehow restore his dignity. They loaded it in grim silence, making multiple trips up and down the stairs. Patricia tried one more time. She appeared in my kitchen doorway, her face arranged in what she probably thought was a sympathetic expression. "Rita, I think we got off on the wrong foot," she said. "Perhaps if we all sat down and talked this through." "No," I said, not looking up from my newspaper. "I'm trying to make peace here," Patricia said, her voice hardening. "I'm not interested in your peace," I said. "I'm interested in you leaving my house." "You're a bitter, spiteful woman," Patricia spat. "No wonder your husband left you. No wonder your daughter can't stand you." I set down the newspaper and looked at her directly. "My husband left me for a younger woman and spent the next 15 years regretting it. My daughter can't stand me because I refuse to be her doormat. And you, Patricia, are projecting your own failures onto me because you can't accept that you raised a son who was stupid enough to sign documents without reading them." Her face went purple. "How dare you—" "Get out of my house," I said quietly. "Get out now, or I'll call the police and have you removed for trespassing." She left, sputtering with rage. Through the window, I watched her storm to the rental truck, gesturing wildly as she ranted to Robert. He looked back at the house with murder in his eyes, but he was too much of a coward to do anything about it. By noon, they were gone. All of them. The house was mine again. I walked through the empty rooms, seeing the evidence of their occupation. Scuff marks on the walls, stains on the carpet. The blue bedroom looked like a tornado had hit it, with hangers scattered across the floor and drawers hanging open. I didn't care. I'd clean it all up. I'd repaint the walls and shampoo the carpets and erase every trace of them. But right now, I just wanted to stand in my house and feel the silence. Mark found me in the blue bedroom, staring at the damage. "You okay?" he asked. "I'm perfect," I said, and meant it. We spent the afternoon cleaning together. Mark didn't have to help, but he did anyway, hauling trash bags to the curb and scrubbing the kitchen until it sparkled. It felt good to reclaim my space, to restore order, to make the house mine again. That evening, we ordered pizza and ate it on the living room floor, surrounded by cleaning supplies and garbage bags. The house still smelled faintly of Patricia's perfume and Robert's cigars, but those scents would fade. Everything would fade except the lesson I'd learned. "No regrets?" Mark asked. I thought about it, really thought about it. Did I regret turning in James? No. The man had put lives at risk. Did I regret forcing them all to leave? No. They'd taken advantage long enough. Did I regret losing my relationship with Brianna? That one hurt. That one would always hurt. But no, I didn't regret it. Because the relationship I'd lost wasn't real. It was built on my willingness to be used, and my daughter's willingness to use me. Better to have no relationship than a toxic one. "No regrets," I said. Mark kissed me, and we made love right there on the living room floor, in the house that was finally, completely mine again. 6 weeks passed, 6 weeks of blessed silence and freedom. I repainted the blue bedroom a cheerful yellow. I replaced the damaged carpet with hardwood floors. I bought new dishes to replace the ones Patricia had broken. I invited Mark to move in, and he said yes. The house became a home again. I didn't hear from Brianna. I'd tried calling a few times in the first week, left messages that went unreturned. I'd sent a text asking how she was doing. Nothing, so I stopped trying. If she wanted to reach out, she knew where I was. Mark's contact, Jennifer, kept us updated on the case. James had taken a plea deal, just as predicted. In exchange for testifying against his supervisors, he'd serve 18 months instead of 5 years. His lawyer had played up his youth and naivety, painted him as a victim of corrupt management. It worked. The judge accepted the plea. James would report to minimum security facility in 2 months. "Brianna's moving back to her apartment," Mark told me one evening. We were cooking dinner together, something that had become our routine. Jennifer heard through the grapevine. She got her old job back, will be working full-time while James is away. Good for her, I said, and meant it. Brianna was tough. She'd survive this. The trial for James's supervisors was scheduled for August. The DA wanted James to testify, to describe how he'd been pressured to sign off on the falsified reports, how management had created a culture where safety concerns were dismissed. Gloria called me the week before the trial. "They want me to testify too," she said, "about what prompted the inspection." My stomach dropped. "Will you have to mention my call?" "Probably," Gloria said. "Rita, I'm sorry. I tried to keep your name out of it, but the defense attorneys are pushing hard. They want to prove that the inspection was motivated by personal vendetta rather than legitimate safety concerns." "It was motivated by both," I said honestly. "I know," Gloria said, "but I can't lie under oath. If they ask me directly how I learned about the violations, I'll have to tell them." "I understand," I said. "Do what you need to do." The trial started on a Tuesday. I didn't attend, but I followed the coverage online. Local news channels were streaming it live, hungry for the spectacle of corporate corruption and criminal negligence. Gloria testified on the 3rd day. I watched from my living room, Mark sitting beside me, his hand holding mine. The defense attorney was a shark in a suit, all sharp teeth and sharper questions. "Ms. Henderson, isn't it true that you initiated this inspection based on a tip from a friend rather than any official complaint?" "I received information about potential violations," Gloria said carefully. "It's my job to investigate such information, regardless of the source." "And who was the source?" the attorney pressed. "A concerned citizen," Gloria said. "A concerned citizen with a personal connection to one of the defendants," the attorney said. "Isn't that correct?" Gloria's jaw tightened. "Yes." "Can you name this concerned citizen?" Gloria looked directly at the camera. "Rita Andrews." My name echoed through the courtroom. The judge called for order as the gallery erupted in whispers. The defense attorney smiled like he'd won the lottery. Rita Andrews is the mother-in-law of James Whitfield, one of the defendants who took a plea deal in this case. Is that correct? Yes, Gloria said. So you initiated an inspection that led to criminal charges against your friend's son-in-law, based solely on her tip, without any other complaints or concerns. I initiated an inspection based on credible information about serious safety violations, Gloria said firmly. What I found at that facility was appalling. Falsified records, inoperable safety equipment, covered-up injuries. The source of the tip is irrelevant when the violations are this egregious. That's for the jury to decide, the attorney said smugly. But Gloria wasn't finished. I've been a fire safety inspector for 23 years, she said, her voice growing more intense. I've encountered a lot of violations, but what I saw at Westfield Manufacturing was gross negligence on a scale that could have endangered many workers. If it took a concerned mother-in-law to bring that to light, then I'm grateful she called. Because my job isn't to protect corrupt management. My job is to protect the people who work there. And that's exactly what I did. The courtroom was silent. Even the smug defense attorney seemed taken aback by Gloria's passion. The judge nodded. Thank you, Miss Henderson. You may step down. Mark turned off the stream and looked at me. Everyone knows now. Yes, I said. Everyone knows. My phone started ringing almost immediately. A reporter from the local paper. A producer from a news show. 3 numbers I didn't recognize. I let them all go to voicemail. But there was one call I answered. A number I recognized. Brianna. You testified against James, she said. Her voice was flat, emotionless. I didn't testify, I corrected. Gloria did. I just made a phone call 6 months ago. You destroyed him, Brianna said. You destroyed us. No, I said firmly. James destroyed himself when he signed those documents. His bosses destroyed him when they pressured him to ignore safety violations. I just made sure the truth came out. The truth? Brianna laughed bitterly. You want to talk about truth? Here's the truth, Mom. I'm 28 years old, 6 months pregnant, and my husband is going to prison. I can barely afford rent. I'm working 50 hours a week just to keep food on the table. And it's all because of you. It's all because of James, I said quietly. And because you chose a man who cut corners and broke rules over having a relationship with your mother. You made your choices, Brianna. Now you live with them. I'll never forgive you, she said. I know, I said. But I forgive myself, and that's what matters. She hung up. I sat there, staring at the phone, feeling the weight of what I'd done settle over me like a blanket. You did the right thing, Mark said. I did the necessary thing, I corrected. Whether it was right, history will decide. But I slept soundly that night, wrapped in Mark's arms, in my own house, free from the people who'd tried to take it over. And that was enough. The trial lasted 2 more weeks. James testified, describing in detail how his supervisors had pressured him to approve safety shortcuts, how they'd threatened his job when he'd raised concerns, how he'd been made to feel like safety regulations were obstacles rather than protections. It was compelling testimony, and it sealed the case against his former bosses. The jury deliberated for 6 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all counts. The 2 senior managers were sentenced to 5 and 7 years respectively, plus massive fines. Westfield Manufacturing declared bankruptcy 2 months later. 140 workers lost their jobs. I tried not to think about that too much. Tried not to calculate how many families I'd affected, how many lives had been disrupted. Mark reminded me that those jobs were built on a foundation of criminal negligence, that the company would have collapsed eventually, probably after someone died in a preventable accident. He was right. I knew he was right. But guilt is a persistent companion, even when you've done the right thing. James reported to prison on a grey October morning. I knew because I saw Brianna's Facebook post A picture of her standing alone outside the facility, her pregnant belly visible under her coat. The caption read, 18 months, we'll survive this. I didn't comment, didn't like it, just noted that she'd unblocked me long enough for me to see it, which felt like a message in itself. Mark and I settled into our life together. He sold his condo and made my house truly ours. We repainted the master bedroom, installed new cabinets in the kitchen, turned the blue bedroom into a home office. Every change erased a little more of the invasion, replaced bad memories with good ones. I didn't hear from Brianna again until December. A Christmas card arrived in the mail, no return address. Inside was an ultrasound photo and a note in Brianna's handwriting. You have a grandson coming in February. His name will be Michael. I thought you should know. I put the card on the refrigerator and cried for an hour. She's extending an olive branch, Mark said gently. Or she's twisting the knife, I replied, showing me what I'm missing. Maybe both, Mark said. Maybe she doesn't know herself. I didn't respond to the card, didn't call or text or send a gift. The ball was in Brianna's court. If she wanted a relationship with me, she knew how to reach out. But it had to be a real relationship, built on mutual respect, not the toxic dynamic we'd had before. I wouldn't be a doormat again, not for anyone, not even for my daughter. January came and went. Mark and I took a trip to the coast, stayed in a bed and breakfast, walked on the beach in the freezing wind, and felt alive and free. We talked about the future, about maybe getting married, about what our life could look like. We talked about everything except Brianna. And then, on a Friday evening in late February, there was a knock at the door. I opened it to find Brianna standing on my porch, a car seat in her hands. Inside it, a tiny baby slept, bundled in blue blankets. Hi, Mum, Brianna said quietly. We stared at each other for a long moment. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, her clothes rumpled. But she was there. She'd come. Hi, I said. This is Michael, Brianna said, looking down at the baby. He's 2 weeks old. I've been meaning to come sooner, but everything's been crazy, and I wasn't sure if you'd want to see us and... Come in, I interrupted. She stepped inside, and I closed the door behind her. Mark appeared from the kitchen, took one look at the situation, and quietly disappeared upstairs. Brianna set the car seat down carefully and turned to face me. I've been thinking a lot, she said. About what happened, about what you did, about what I did. Okay, I said carefully. I was angry, Brianna said. I'm still angry, honestly. James is in prison because of you. Our life fell apart because of you. Your life fell apart because James broke the law, I said firmly. I won't accept responsibility for his choices. I know, Brianna said, and the admission seemed to cost her something. Logically, I know that, but emotionally, it's easier to blame you than to accept that I married someone who was capable of that level of negligence. I said nothing, just waited. But I've also been thinking about before, Brianna continued, about how we treated you, how I treated you. And Mum, I'm sorry. I'm sorry we moved in without asking. I'm sorry Patricia tried to take over your house. I'm sorry I stopped seeing you as my mother and started seeing you as a convenience. The apology hung in the air between us, fragile and uncertain. I'm sorry too, I said quietly. I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner. I'm sorry I let resentment build until I did something that hurt you. I'm sorry your life is hard right now. But you're not sorry you called Gloria, Brianna said. No, I admitted. I'm not. Because those workers deserved better. Because safety violations aren't just paperwork, they're lives. And because sometimes the right thing and the painful thing are the same thing. Brianna nodded slowly. I'm trying to understand that. I'm trying to see it from your perspective. It's hard. I know, I said. Michael stirred in his car seat, making a tiny mewling sound. Brianna bent down to check on him, adjusting his blanket with practiced ease. I don't know if we can fix this, Brianna said, not looking at me. I don't know if our relationship can survive what happened, but I want to try, for Michael's sake and for mine. I want him to know his grandmother. I want him to have family. Something loosened in my chest, some knot of grief and anger and fear that I'd been carrying for months. I want that too, I said. But things have to be different, Brianna said, finally meeting my eyes. I can't promise I'll always agree with you. I can't promise I won't still be angry sometimes about what happened, but I can promise I'll try to see you, really see you, as a person with your own life and needs and boundaries. That's all I've ever wanted, I said. Brianna picked up the car seat. Can I show you how to hold him? I'd like that, I said. She showed me how to support Michael's head, how to cradle him against my chest. He was so small, so perfect, his tiny fingers curling and uncurling as he slept. I looked down at my grandson and felt the complicated tangle of love and loss and hope that comes with family. He has your eyes, I said. Yeah, Brianna said softly. He does. We sat together on the couch, passing Michael back and forth, talking carefully about safe subjects, Brianna's job, Michael's sleep schedule, the weather, small talk that felt like the foundation of something bigger, something that might eventually become forgiveness. She didn't stay long. Michael needed to be fed, and Brianna had to get home. But before she left, she hugged me. It was brief and awkward, our bodies not quite fitting together anymore, but it was something. I'll call you, she said. Maybe we can do lunch next week. I'd like that, I said. I watched from the porch as she buckled Michael into the car and drove away. Mark appeared beside me, slipping his arm around my waist. How do you feel? He asked. I thought about it. How did I feel? Relief that Brianna had reached out. Sadness for all the time we'd lost. Hope that maybe, eventually, we could build something new. Gratitude for Mark, for Gloria, for my own strength in standing up for myself. I feel like I did the right thing, I said finally. Not the easy thing, not the thing that made everyone happy, but the right thing. Good, Mark said and kissed my temple. We stood there on the porch as the sun set, watching the street turn gold and orange and then purple with dusk. Somewhere across town, Brianna was putting Michael to bed. Somewhere in a minimum security prison, James was counting down the days until his release. Somewhere, Gloria was inspecting another facility, keeping workers safe. And I was here, in my house, with a man who loved me, having survived my daughter's betrayal and enacted my revenge and come out the other side still standing, not unscathed, not unchanged, but standing. The ending wasn't perfect. There was no happily ever after, no complete reconciliation, no guarantee that Brianna and I would ever fully repair what had been broken. Life didn't work that way. Real life was messy and complicated and full of consequences that rippled out in ways you couldn't predict. But I'd taken back my life. I'd drawn boundaries. I'd refused to be a victim. And in doing so, I'd forced everyone around me to see me as a person, not just a convenient resource to be exploited. That was my revenge. Not James's prison sentence, though that was part of it. Not Brianna's struggles, though those were inevitable. My revenge was reclaiming myself, refusing to disappear, insisting on being seen and heard and respected, and it was worth it. Mark and I went inside, closing the door on the past and walking into the future we were building together. The house was quiet, peaceful, ours. I'd fought for it, bled for it, lost my daughter for it, but I'd won, and that was enough.